Scott, the term for this video is innovation. Tell us what you think about this in light of the Good Place organization.
Yeah, so leading an organization, if you're responsible for making decisions that affect the direction of the organization, managing innovation is important. Innovation is based on our being created in God's image, which the first thing we see God doing in Scripture is creating things. God is creative. Being made in God's image, whatever else that all includes us being creative. Innovation is an expression of our creative nature. I think God creates us to always want more, and that desire is intended to lead us to God, who's infinite. Everything other than God will disappoint us in our desire to have something more. When we were kids, we wanted a new toy. When we got it, we thought we'd be happy forever, but eventually we got bored with that one and we wanted the next one. God's the last item in that line. Once we connect with God, our desire for more will constantly be satisfied in God. Part of our God-given desire to have more relates to interacting with the world, which the world that we are created in is an environment of inescapable grace. So anything that we do, God can use and will use and does use to build us up to be the people He wants us to be. So by nature, every one of us is creative and innovates when we do things. We always look for better or different ways to do things. We get bored, we try to do something more interesting. That's innovation. We are created to be creative. When somebody manages the work of other people, to do that with the proper level of stewardship to reflect God's interest in what people do at work, we need to give people plenty of space to be creative in what they do. Now, that's not infinite space. You mentioned systems when we were talking about the business formula. When a group of people work together for a common purpose, you have to have agreed methods. And so you agree, we're always going to put the blue bolt on the blue nut on the red bolt. You see a red bolt, put a blue nut on it, or else the product won't work. So we agree on that. Somebody might say, you know what, I think there's a better way to do this. Well, you don't just start doing it differently than everyone else, you suggest that. And if there's been competent internal communication, everybody in education, everybody understands what the purpose of their work is. They understand the purpose of the specific task that they work on and how they contribute to the overall aim. And they will have a pretty good idea from that if something is an improvement based on the values that the group holds. And then that gives people an opportunity to be creative in their work and feel like they have impact on the work they do versus being just a component that we plug in and say, do this for the rest of your life.
So I think in theory we all agree with this, but in actual practice, sometimes improper filters are at play. For example, someone might say, well, that person is, here's the just word again, right? Just a truck driver or just a nuts on the bolt guy. How could he have an idea as to how to better our communication? How could he have an idea of how to save money for us on departments that aren't his department or her department, right? And so there's a sense where you have to listen to the idea, right, and not the person. Well,
so good questions. Typically, people have ideas about the work that they do themselves. And the W. Edwards Deming is a person who I learned the most from about managing systems. And one of the things he used to say is the person closest to the work that's being done and closest to the customer probably has the better ideas on how to improve their product or service to meet the needs of the customer than somebody who's farther up the organization chart of who has formal authority to make decisions, because those people typically are not face-to-face with product and customers. I'll just say from my experience, we've had many suggestions that people who are quote unquote frontline members of the organization, directly working with our products and our customers, they come up with concepts that become new product offerings that have long lifetimes and give people lots of employment to do that work. So you never know where a good idea is coming from.
Okay, so here's another issue that pops up, or situation, right? People say, well, look, this is a big company. I'm very grateful for the job I have. I don't want to lose it. If I come up with an innovation and I try to talk to others about it, implement it, it actually gets a pilot going or something. If it works out, I'm not going to get any recompense for that. There's not an agreement as to how I can profit from this and get properly rewarded. But if it doesn't work out and it has a negative effect, I might actually get blamed for it.
Matt, you hang around a lot of pessimistic people. So I'm going to take a very optimistic perspective and an idealistic perspective to that. And it goes back to, what is the purpose of work? And again, that question comes from a place where you think of the business, which is where you go to work, and or organization, whether it's a for-profit or not-for-profit, is primarily a place where you do something that has economic impact, that you make money, and that's the point of it, is to make money. The point is for people to have better lives. And you touch on compensation, that's a whole other topic. One of the sections of the Utopia book is the economy in a good place. If you look in Scripture describes, and I would say prescribes, an economy that believers have ignored since the first century. And that's a whole other topic to get into. But the purpose of work, the purpose of labor, the purpose of being in a role where you manage the work that other people do is to give them opportunity, encouragement to grow and develop who they are, and to explore this world that God gave us to find new means of grace. That's the purpose for work. When people twist that, all sorts of awful things happen. And most every business place twists that. I feel like lone voice in the wilderness. I'm not alone. A lot of people with me on this. Just have the base understanding of what you're supposed to do when you go to work and what the values are not derived from God's vision for us. So here's a story I like to tell related to innovation. When God created this world, He knew that we'd use electricity and have light bulbs. He knew it because by physics, He created atoms and charges and magnetism, metals that carry current, and everything exists for us to figure out how to generate, transmit, distribute, and use electricity. It's just a matter of time for us to find that. And we couldn't do it right away because that technology rests on the backs of centuries of other development and understanding and technology. But it's inevitable. And so when Benjamin Franklin flew a kite to find out what lightning was made out of, was it a fluid? It was just interesting. In the 18th century, they were trying to explore and understand what is electricity. All kinds of crazy ideas. It was inevitable. Somebody was going to discover electricity and generate it, and we would use it. We'd have electric motors. It was inevitable that we would fly airplanes. God had fuel that we could burn in internal combustion engines that had a power to rate ratio. He had the principle of the airfoil that would generate lift. He made us so that we could understand all those things. God knew we were going to fly. So Wilbur and Orville didn't invent flight. They were in a desperate race to be the first one to put their name on it, A, out of pride, B, out of first one in makes all the money. And they made quite a bit of money off of flying first. They got military contracts, made a lot of money. It was inevitable that would be discovered. All the discoveries that are happening to AI, inevitable that we would develop AI. It's not being used by people who look at human creativity as something God gave all of us to build up who we are as individuals and to build shalom in the world where we live.
Yeah, I guess I want to clarify a little bit because when someone in an organization does come up with a way that is innovative and really brings in more revenue for the company, and if they are somehow not sharing in that increased revenue, it's going to be the rare person that sits back and says, well, this is wonderful, I did my job as a creative person. In fact, many people are going to sense a growing notion of unfairness in terms of why is everyone profiting, or why haven't I somehow reaped the reward of this? So if an organization wants to have some sort of compensation, some sort of reward system in play, is that antithetical to good place holding principles? I'm not saying they have to, I'm just saying if they choose to do that.
So two categories, intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. We all work best with intrinsic motivation to do something for its own sake because it's good. Once you have an extrinsic motivation, now people twist it and corrupt it and use it for something other than what makes it good. If people are treated fairly financially in an organization and equitably, so you've got a very small gap between entry level and top pay level, then everybody's in it to support each other. And when you create that kind of community, they're happy to contribute. It benefits them. Somebody else came up with the idea that caused the work that they're doing. Now, if that person's off, living on a private island because they made tens of millions of dollars, that's what they want. But if that person says, I'm using the gifts God gave me for everyone's benefit and I'm okay, then you'll attract people who want to live that way, and people who work with you who might not start out that way, maybe they'll be influenced to live and think that way.
Thank you.